Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Straight Talk on Photography. As always, I am Adam Welch. And folks, I don't know what they are putting in the water over at Tamron lately, but things are getting a little bit ridiculous with some of these new lenses that they have been coming out with lately. Namely, and what we're going to be talking about in this video is their brand new mid-range telephoto, the 35mm to 150mm f2.8 to f4 DI VC OSD. Before we get started, I'm going to urge you to head over to Contrastly if you haven't already and read the full written review of this lens. It's going to be some more information in there. And then if you have any questions, please do come on back to my channel. Ask your questions in the comments and I will do my best to answer them as soon as I possibly can. Now, to get started about this lens, you know I'm not the type to really deal in absolutes. Only Siths do that. So I don't say this lightly. Guys, this may be one of, if not the sharpest lenses, zoom lenses that I've ever used, especially wide open. The sharpness on this thing is kind of scary. I'm going to show you some more sample images. I was absolutely blown away when I was asked to review this lens. I don't know, I wasn't expecting it to be that sharp for whatever reason. I don't know why, I just wasn't. So I was extremely surprised when I saw the sharpness, and not only the sharpness, the contrast of this thing. The images right out of camera were absolutely spectacular. Now, aside from the sharpness, the color rendition is perfect. There's no chromatic aberration that I've saw at all. That includes wide open at 35mm, which incidentally, this thing will shoot, at least my model on the Canon 5D Mark III, will shoot at f2.8 all the way up to about 50mm. So you have 35mm all the way up to 50mm, covering a lot of those normal focal lengths. And I'll mention too, going back to that f2.8 aperture, excuse me, that if you even stop down to, let's say, f3.5, the corner to corner sharpness gets even better if that was possible. I shot some of these things at 35mm at f3.5. Sharpness was superb. Again, the contrast was superb. Now, a few specs that you're going to want to know about this lens. It does come in Canon and Nikon mounts, and that includes the new Nikon Z mount for Nikon's new mirrorless camera system. Whether you've heard anything about that or not, keep that in mind. The overall weight for the Canon mount is 796 grams. That's 28.1 ounces. Nikon shooters, you're going to get off a little bit easier. It's going to be 790 grams for the Nikon mount, 27.9 ounces. The overall length of this lens when it is retracted at that 35mm focal length is about 5 inches for Canon. Nikon guys, you're going to be doing pretty good on this one as well. You're going to shave off about 1/10 of an inch, about 4.9 inches. And if you extend it out to that 150, again, Canon 5D Mark III, gives you a little bit of an idea how much that bad boy is going to stick off the front of your camera. Moving around the lens real fast here, a few things I want to mention. First of all, you do have a zoom lock switch, which will lock you into 35mm. It doesn't lock at 150. So if you carry your camera on your shoulder for long periods of time around your neck with that lens pointed down, that zoom lock is really going to help you out and prevent that lens from drifting downward. Something else I mentioned in the review, my memory is getting a little fuzzy on me, but I think Tamron may have slightly tweaked a few of the characteristics of this lens as compared to some of the other lenses that I reviewed recently from them. There's a recessed area as it tapers down towards the front of the lens here on the barrel. This is the focus ring. This is the zoom ring. And you might be able to see this or not. There's a step right here, and I don't remember that being on some of the other lenses in the DI series that I've reviewed before. The other thing I wanted to mention, and again, I may be wrong about this, but the VC and the AF manual focus switches here, this little area where they are mounted, I think has been moved more from the bottom side of the lens all the way, or more so up to the top of the lens. And I think it actually protrudes out a little bit further. And the only reason I noticed this was when I was zooming the lens in and out, I noticed that my thumb was in perfect position to manipulate the VC on and off and the AF manual focus switch on and off a little bit better than I think I have been able to do in the past. Long story short, it is very nimble, very easy to get to, and you don't have to really move around and look to get to all of your switches on the side of the lens. So Tamron, if you see this and I am right about this, well done. I really like that change, and I hope you include this on some more of your lenses. Another thing that surprised me about this lens is that it's not very bulky for a mid-range telephoto lens that goes up to 150 millimeters. Hang on to your socks. This thing has 19 lens elements in it in 14 groups.
What?
19. So that even makes the sharpness more impressive, because you have 19 pieces of glass that the light has to pass through from the front of the lens before it hits the sensor, and you don't have any chromatic aberrations. The sharpness is outstanding. That's a lot of glass for the light to pass through. I don't know how they did it, but apparently they did it, and this thing still comes in under 2 pounds. The MOD, or the minimum object distance, that is the minimum distance that you can be from your subject for having this lens actually be able to focus. Tamron lists that at 17.7 inches. And speaking of focusing, with this lens, one of the new features that Tamron has introduced is that OSD. It is the OSD in that big long title for the lens itself. That stands for Optimized Silent Drive, and it does exactly what you think it would do. It's a brand new autofocusing motor and mechanism that makes the autofocus on this thing extremely quiet, and the vibration actually doesn't transfer as much as it, and this could just be in my mind again, as much as some of the other Tamron lenses that I have evaluated in the past. So if that's important to you, that really quiet autofocus, I don't think you're going to be disappointed with the 35-150. And last but not least, 2 more things I want to talk about before we wrap up here. That is the vibration control, the VC. This, of course, has it built in. It supposedly can help stabilize your shot up to 5 stops. So if you're shooting handheld, low light, you can still actually have a steady image or a more stabilized image because of that VC. I didn't use it a whole lot with this lens. Most of the time I was shooting with it, it was very, very bright outside. So I didn't use the VC very much at all. If it was really dim, I was on a tripod, but it still works very well if it's anything like the vibration control and some of the other Tamron lenses I've worked with. So let's talk about one more thing about the 35-150 before we go, and that is going to be Tamron's weather sealing technology. They've been featuring on their lenses for the last few years now. They call it the moisture sealing, not really weather sealing, but I got a hell of a lot of use out of that while I was evaluating this lens. It has multiple sealing gaskets throughout the housing of the lens from the front to the back, and of course the main one that you can see actually is on the lens bayonet that butts up against the face of the camera, the mount of the camera here. And that's really going to help you keep not only moisture out of your camera and out of the back of the lens, those connectors, that's really going to be what your AF and your metering relies on coming through the lens, but it will also help keep a lot of dust, a lot of grit out of your camera and off your sensor. It makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside being able to see that rubber gasket around the back of this lens. All right, guys, that's going to wrap up this episode covering Tamron's brand new kid on the block, the 35-150mm f2.8 f4. Excellent lens. I absolutely fell in love with it. Super sharp, super contrasty. It's not that high of a price. It goes for just under $800 right now, or the last time I checked before this video, over at Amazon and B&H. If you're in the market for a lens like that, they can do just about anything. I urge you to check this out. And again, if you haven't checked out my full written review of this lens over at contrastly.com, I hope you have, but if you have not, head over there and skim through that. And if you happen to have any questions, head on back here and I will do my best to answer them. If I don't have the answers for you, I can guarantee you I can find out. So until next time, I'm Adam Welch. Thanks a lot for joining me. Straight Talk on Photography. See you next time.